Hi, everyone, and welcome to the next edition of the Train and Talk series by Chartered Accountants Ireland. My name is Sinead from the team, and today we are talking about our diploma in corporate finance. And I am delighted because we have got Brian Fain and Orla Fisher joining us. So, Brian and Orla, welcome. Thank you so much for agreeing to come and share some of your insights about the programme. And look, I know both of you, so what about we do a handover to Brian first? I would love a bit of an introduction for the benefit of folk tuning in.
Thank you, Sinead. Lovely to be here with you and Orla. Good afternoon, good evening. Hello, everybody. My name is Brian Feehan. I am Programme Tutor on the Diploma in Corporate Finance. I work across a number of programmes, both on the Specialist Qualifications Programme and also on the main qualification with Chartered Accountants Ireland. And I also have my own corporate training business. I'm a Chartered Accountant myself. Believe it or not, I'm a former graduate from this diploma, so I know what it's like to be on the student side. And look, most of my career I spent in banking and financial services, so I hope to bring a lot of that real world experience to bear in the program as well.
Full circle, you coming back to it, Brian. It's brilliant. And Orla, your good self an introduction would be lovely.
No problem at all. Hi, everyone. Very nice to make your introduction virtually. So my name is Orla Fisher. I am a director in transaction services and deals in PwC. I've worked with PwC for over 20 years, and almost 17, 18 of those years have been in transactions in that department. Prior to that, I spent about 5 or 6 years in PwC's audit and assurance practice. I am a UCD graduate. I did the Bachelor of Commerce in UCD and then followed on with a Master's in Accounting. And I'm also, like Brian, a qualified Chartered Accountant and a Fellow of Chartered Accountants Ireland. I'm also a former chairman of the Leinster Society of Chartered Accountants. So I've been involved with Chartered Accountants Ireland for a long number of years. So I'm hoping to bring some practical experience to the course. I work with a large number of PLCs and private equity clients, and I've worked across a range of transactions in energy, IT, healthcare, manufacturing, etc. So a pretty wide range of experience. So hopefully you'll find it beneficial during some of my sessions. Thank you.
Absolutely. So lots to bring to the table across you both, which is fantastic. Now, I suppose the benefit of doing one of these videos is to explore what is involved in the qualification, not only meet your good selves. So I'd love to talk a bit more about the content, what is actually involved. So Brian, if I come back to you, would you talk me through what do you deliver in the diploma?
Sure, Sinead. Yeah. So, like as a diploma and one of the specialist qualifications, I suppose one of the longest established ones too. It's quite an extensive program. There's a lot of content there. So we've divided it up into 6 modules in total. I look after the first 4, and then Orla will take you through the final 2 modules. The first module is all around financial analysis, risk, and a little bit of financial maths. We can't get away from that. So we're really covering, I suppose, a lot of the fundamentals and the basics around financial analysis in module 1. We then move on to investment decisions, investment appraisal, cost of capital, things like that in module 2, which we cover extensively. We then have module 3 covers the whole area of financing the organization, financial management and treasury decisions. And then in module 4, we cover certainly one of my favorites, which is the whole area of corporate valuation and the wider kind of capital markets context for that.
Oh, great. And then Orla, it's over to you. Tell me a bit about your side.
Of course, no problem. So I then step in after Brian, big shoes to fill. So I cover modules 5 and 6. Module 5 is pretty much focused on the transaction process. So I walk you through the transaction process, and we look at some key transaction documents as part of that. We also look at the due diligence process, both from a financial and a vendor due diligence perspective. And then I pretty much close that session then by looking at purchase price considerations. So focusing on items like normalized earnings, normalized net working capital, and adjusted net debt. And at the tail end of module 5, then we walk through a pretty detailed case study, which pretty much goes through everything that we have gone through in module 5. Module 6 then covers the transaction environment. So I give you an up-to-date analysis of what's been happening in the transaction environment, both globally and also locally in the Irish market and across Europe. I then look at some key transaction considerations when you're undertaking a transaction. So thinking about things like what makes a successful versus an unsuccessful transaction, what is the rationale for a deal, what are the business drivers, and what might the key risks and scoping matters be. And then finally, I close that session then by looking at closing an actual transaction, thinking about warranties and indemnities, and also looking at a lockbox versus completion accounts.
So there's lots packed in, really, really comprehensive. Now, another question we often get asked is around how do you study? You know, what is actually involved if I was to come on board as a participant? If I stay with you, can you tell me a bit more about that? You know, what can people expect when they sign up?
Yeah, absolutely. I think like it is going to be an investment of your time, but I do think that it is going to be, I think it's a really, really worthwhile investment. It's actually a course I considered doing myself a long number of years ago, and now I'm actually lecturing in it, which is absolutely fantastic. But I think where possible, if you can turn up to the virtual classes, I think actually that's the first piece of advice I would offer you. Both Brian and I are very practically driven. We like to do case studies. We do individual case studies. We do group case studies as part of our classes. And we find that people get an awful lot more out of it when you actually turn up to class, because you'll not only learn from me, but you'll also learn from each other as well, which you'll find is actually really, really beneficial. Now, I appreciate people have obligations in terms of family and work, etc. But where possible, and you can actually turn up to class, I think that's the first important piece of advice I would give you. After that, then, if there is pre-reading material, to the extent you get a chance to read it, you may not get a chance to read it in detail, but even if you're able to scan it, at least you're not looking at it for the first time when you turn up to class. And then probably finally, what I would say is, try to do as many practical examples as you possibly can. We're going to talk about assignments now shortly. I think Brian's going to talk to us about that. But one thing I would say is not just to sit down and watch the sessions and be reading the material, actually sit down and try and do some of the practical examples yourself, because that's the way that you'll actually learn the best.
No, it's great to get those insights. Brian, have you anything to add on that in terms of I suppose, the study piece?
There was a point that Orla made. I was just reflecting on it when she made it, and it comes up time and again in all the training I think I'm involved in, and it was that whole aspect of peer-to-peer learning. If I could say anything about that benefit of being there in the virtual classroom, all that research says that actually, hopefully, Orla and I will teach you things that are useful, but you'll actually learn a lot more from the people you're working alongside with. And we set that up nicely, actually, with the support team in the virtual classrooms. We'll be using breakout rooms and reflection, individual and team reflection and feedback. So it's not at all intimidating. It's actually very good. It's a good way to get to know people. It's a really, really good way to embed the learnings from this program.
No, and we see that in the feedback, that peer-to-peer learning is invaluable. So great tips there. Brian, I'll maybe stay with you. Assessment. We'll always get asked questions on assessment. What can people expect there?
Unfortunately, no gain, no pain, Sinead. So yes, we do. We no longer have the end of the term exam, but we do have 3 assignments, and they are significant, right? So we mentioned the 6 modules. So after module 2, you have assignment 1. After module 4, you have assignment 2, and after module 6, when you're done and dusted with both Orla and I, you'll have the final assignment, which is assignment 3. 25% of the marks goes for assignment 1, another 25% for assignment 2, and then 50% rides on the final assignment, which is kind of like an integrated case study, taking on board all of the learnings from the program. And look, the assignments are challenging. There's a fair bit of time involved in getting them done. It's not something you'll do in an afternoon. We'll give you further guidance on that as you go through the program. But the good news is, if you have been reading the material, attending the sessions, getting involved in the program, whilst you will find them challenging, they absolutely are the best way to really activate the learning on the program. I found the assignments tough when I was doing it, but they were hand and heart the best way to learn the material. And they're real life case studies, so they're good. They're fun. They're interesting. Really, the purpose of the assignment is not to catch people out. It's to give them a chance to shine based on the learnings and the material. And they examine different parts of the program, and they're positioned that way deliberately. Typically, you'll have, you release the assignment. You'll have usually about 4 weeks actually to complete it. So fair block of time to plan your way through it and submit it through the program.
Brilliant. No, I think it's useful to step through that. Orla, anything else you want to come in on the examination side?
No, just I think to add, I think to Brian's point as well, I think it's important for people to bear in mind that the sessions are designed to be complementary to each other as well. So Brian and I have worked really closely for a long number of years developing this material and pulling it all together. So it's not that you do, Brian's 4 modules and you forget about everything that Brian has taught you, and then Orla comes in and she's going to teach you something completely new. That's not it at all. So all of the 6 modules are designed to be complementary. And then in particular, when you come to the back end, the business end of the course really, and you're doing the final assessment, really important to join up everything together that both hopefully Brian and I have taught you, and other areas that you may have learned from your peer-to-peer group interactions as well. So that's really the only other point that I'd add.
No, I think it's important to call that out, that building block model and that cohesion. I suppose asking the question, who's it for? Who's the ideal candidate for this? Brian, if I come back to you.
Yeah, happy to take that, Sinead. We get asked this question a lot. It's interesting. I mean, because of the name, okay, Diploma in Corporate Finance, people maybe think that this is a program for people who work in corporate finance roles, in investment firms, in advisory firms like Orla and her team, for example, or for people who aspire to be in those roles. And absolutely, if you are thinking of that career pivot or you're already in that space, I think we would absolutely recommend the program to you. It's a good base, right? But it's much broader than that. The majority of people actually who attend and qualify on this program are people in typically in finance roles, but the important aspect of that is, and really where this is at, like the other specialist qualification as well, is we're trying to elevate people's influence and decision-making capability in the organization and help you add more value to the organization. And you can't do that in a decision-making capacity unless you're absolutely steeped in the fundamentals, right? So a lot of people probably know their stuff when it comes to accounting, maybe financial reporting and so on, but the practical application of the key techniques in corporate finance, like how you make investment decisions, how you apply concepts like the cost of capital, how you value a business, how you analyze and assess a business. These are really core skills. You may have covered them at some point in the past, but you won't have covered them to the same level of degree of depth and practical application that hopefully you will on this program. And I think that will help accelerate and add value to anybody's CV.
Orla, anything else to add to that one in terms of the ideal candidate?
No, really, the one thing I'd say, and I know Brian alluded to it, I know a lot of people use this course as a stepping stone, and it has worked very well for lots of people. We stay in contact with a lot of the course participants, and we get to meet, I get to meet them sometimes on the other side of a table on a transaction years later. So a lot of people do use it as a stepping stone to get into a particular area if they're looking to execute a transaction themselves. So yeah, look, I have to say, it's a very wide audience. We'll have both people coming with a financial and a non-financial background, accountants and non-accountants. Again, that brings a great diversity to the course and also a great opportunity to learn from lots of different people as well.
No, brilliant. And Orla, I'll maybe stick with you as we start to close things out. What would you say to someone considering it? I suppose we're coming up to, there'll be intakes coming through soon, and someone maybe just sitting on the fence, or what would you say to them?
Yeah, I have to say, I wouldn't be sitting here and I wouldn't be lecturing in the course unless I felt it was actually worth doing. So I have to say, I think it is a really practical course. We're constantly evolving the material to try and keep it as up to date as possible. I think it's really interesting because, yes, it is a financial course, but it also has a very commercial focus as well in terms of working in business, doing business, looking at businesses. As Brian said, a lot of the work and the case studies that we do are actually real life case studies. The vast majority of them are. So I think people will learn an awful lot from it practically. They'll also be able to relate to the material, I think, quite a bit as well. And the area of corporate finance, the area of M&A and deals, is quite a bespoke area as well. And it's often seen as a very attractive area for people to go into, but it is a very specialist qualification. And I think that's what makes it particularly interesting. Yes, it will be challenging. As Brian said, you won't get the case studies done in an afternoon, but I think coming out of the course and having done the 3 assignments, it will make you very well equipped either to, if you're going to be working in a transaction in the future or whatever path that may take you. I think actually you'll find the content and the course and the material very worthwhile.
Loads of value to gain. And Brian, any closing remarks from yourself?
I think Orla has summed it up really, really well. I mean, the one kind of twist maybe I'd add to that is in a world like we are today, where we are besieged by an extraordinary volume of information, your ability to be able to sift through that and extract what's important, and in particular to be able to decide, to have the confidence to make sound business judgment. I think this course will really help people with this, to help make more sure-footed, more confident assessments about what's valuable and what's important in their business, and the key drivers of that. So that's something I would certainly say is a big benefit of doing this program.
Fantastic. Orla, Brian, thank you so much for taking us through all of that. I think it's been really valuable, and anybody tuning in, no doubt, is going away equipped with a lot more information. Folks tuning in, coming up on the next screen, we'll have details of the next intake. Just to say very lastly again, Brian, Orla, thank you so much. And
Thank you,
folks tuning
Sinead.
in, we'll see you soon. Thanks now.
Thank you all.